Imagine for a moment that humanity is not the first spark of intelligence to rise on Earth. What if, buried beneath our feet, scattered in forgotten deserts or drowned beneath ancient oceans, there are traces of civilizations that thrived long before ours, only to vanish without leaving a name in history? We tell ourselves that human progress is a straight line, from stone tools to satellites, from cave paintings to quantum physics. But what if that line is broken? What if we are merely the latest in a cycle that has repeated countless times, like waves crashing against the same shore? Archaeology insists that civilization began some 6,000 years ago, with Sumer and the birth of writing. Yet the Earth itself is 4.5 billion years old. That means human history, as we know it, fits into the blink of an eye compared to the age of our planet. Isn't it strange to think that in all that vastness of time, intelligence emerged only once, and that it's us? Or could there have been others, lost in the deep abyss of forgotten ages? The silence of the past is haunting, but not empty. There are hints, whispers in stone, anomalies that defy explanation. Consider the mystery of the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece. At first, it looked like corroded bronze, but under study, it revealed gears so precise, so intricate, that it could predict the movements of the stars and planets. A machine at least 2,000 years ahead of its time. Who built it? How did such technology emerge in an age when humanity supposedly knew so little? Some call it a miracle of Greek genius. Others wonder, what if it was not the first time knowledge of such complexity appeared on Earth? Could it have been a rediscovery? A faint echo of something far older? And then there are the megaliths. Stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, quarried, moved, and set in place with impossible precision. From the Great Pyramids of Giza to the mysterious city of Pumapunku in Bolivia, we see monuments that defy logic. Ancient builders, working with tools no more advanced than copper chisels, supposedly achieved feats that modern engineers, with cranes and lasers, would struggle to replicate. How? Were these simply triumphs of human will and ingenuity, or did they inherit techniques from a forgotten age, passed down as myths and legends, until they became stories of gods and giants? The more we look, the more the ground beneath our certainty shakes. In India's ancient epics, there are tales of flying machines, weapons of unimaginable power, battles fought in the skies. To some, these are no more than myths, products of imagination. But to others, they are distorted memories, the folklore of a civilization that reached heights before ours, only to collapse and vanish, leaving behind nothing but stories. And here's the chilling question. If such a civilization existed, advanced enough to wage wars with weapons that resemble nuclear blasts, what became of it? Did they destroy themselves, as we fear we might? Even geology joins the mystery. Scientists have discovered signs in Earth's strata of sudden extinctions, abrupt changes in climate, and layers of radioactive residue. Some of these can be explained by natural events, like asteroid impacts or volcanic eruptions, but some anomalies whisper of something else, as if long ago, the Earth bore witness to catastrophes born not of nature, but of intelligence gone astray. If such a thing happened once, could it happen again? And perhaps the strangest clue of all lies not in stone or myth, but in time itself. Humanity has existed in its modern form for roughly 300,000 years, yet for almost all of that time, we were hunter-gatherers. Civilization as we know it is astonishingly recent. If we had the potential for science, art, and technology tens of thousands of years ago, why did it take so long? Could it be that this is not our first attempt? That cycles of rise and fall stretch far behind the veil of history, erased by the relentless march of time, glaciers, and oceans? We dig for bones, we search for pottery, we map the ruins of cities. But what if the evidence we seek is so old that it has been ground to dust, recycled into the Earth itself? After all, in 10,000 years, most of our modern cities would vanish without a trace. Steel rusts, glass crumbles, Plastic decays faster than we think under sunlight and heat. In 1,000,000 years, New York or Tokyo would be indistinguishable from the wilderness around them. If we disappeared tomorrow, how much of us would remain? And if an ancient civilization had once walked this earth, how much of them could possibly have survived? The possibility is unsettling, even terrifying, because it means that we may not be the pinnacle of history, but just another fragile chapter. And if that's true, then the next question is unavoidable. Are we destined to repeat their fate?
What if the great legends of our world, the flood myths, the tales of Atlantis, the stories of gods descending from the sky, are not just symbolic tales, but fractured memories of civilizations erased by catastrophe? Nearly every culture on Earth preserves a story of a deluge, of waters rising to swallow cities whole, of survivors clinging to mountains or drifting in boats to seed the world anew. Why would cultures separated by oceans and millennia all preserve the same memory? Is it coincidence? Or is it evidence that humanity once lived through a disaster so immense that it scarred our collective consciousness forever? Plato's account of Atlantis is the most famous. He described a mighty civilization, advanced in knowledge, rich in resources, powerful enough to command armies and fleets, until arrogance and corruption brought them down. In a single night and day, the island was swallowed by the sea. To most, it is myth. But then consider how many myths have later been proven real. Troy, once dismissed as fantasy, was unearthed stone by stone. Could Atlantis too have a kernel of truth? Perhaps it was not just one city, but a memory of all those that came before, civilizations lost to the relentless tides of time. The sea is a merciless eraser. 90% of human settlements in prehistory would have been along coastlines, places rich with food and trade. But since the last ice age, sea levels have risen by over 120 meters. Imagine entire cities, ports, monuments now lying on the ocean floor, untouched and unseen. Off the coast of Japan, divers have found the Yonaguni Monument, massive stone terraces and steps that some claim are natural formations, while others insist they are the ruins of an ancient sunken city. Off India's coast, in the Gulf of Khamhath, sonar scans have revealed structures buried deep beneath the water, symmetrical, aligned, eerily artificial. If these are man-made, they date back to a time when mainstream history tells us humans should not have been building cities at all. So who built them? And where did they go? There are whispers in stone deserts as well. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, archaeologists uncovered a megalithic temple complex over 11,000 years old. Older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older even than agriculture itself. According to our understanding, people of that era should have been simple nomads, hunting and gathering to survive. Yet here stands a sprawling sanctuary with massive carved pillars, astronomical alignments, and artwork that speaks of a deep symbolic world. How could hunter-gatherers build something so monumental, so precise? Was Göbekli Tepe the spark of civilization? Or was it a remnant, a final echo of a culture already on its way out, desperately preserving knowledge before it vanished? And then there are the out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem to have no right existing in their time. In coal seams and ancient rock layers, strange metal spheres and carved objects have been found, their origins disputed, their existence inconvenient. Most are dismissed as natural anomalies, geological oddities, but some remain unexplained. If they are what they appear to be, evidence of craft, then it would mean that human-like intelligence was shaping the world long before our accepted timeline. Skeptics argue that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and they are right. But what if the very nature of time erases the extraordinary? Our cities today, built of steel and glass, are fragile against the scale of millennia. In just a few thousand years, forests would reclaim them, seas would rise, tectonic plates would grind them down. Imagine stretching that to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. How much would survive? Very little. Perhaps only what was built in stone, what was carved into mountainsides. And is it not curious that the most enduring structures of antiquity, the pyramids, the stone circles, the megaliths, are precisely those things? This raises a haunting possibility. Maybe stone was chosen for a reason. Maybe it was not just the most durable material available, but a deliberate choice by those who came before us, who knew all else would vanish. Could the monuments scattered across the globe be messages, warnings, or markers left behind for those who would rise after them? And if so, what are they trying to tell us? Look again at the stars. Many ancient sites, from Egypt to Mexico, from Stonehenge to the pyramids of Teotihuacan, are aligned with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, the rising of Orion. Why this obsession with the heavens? To mark time? To honor gods? Or could it be that the sky itself was the clock of forgotten ages, the only unchanging canvas across cycles of civilizations? If knowledge was meant to survive, encoding it in the stars might have been the only way to do it. The deeper we look, the more fragile our version of history becomes. It's like walking through a vast, dark hall with only a candle. The flame illuminates fragments, a ruin here, a story there, but the shadows between are immense. In those shadows may lie entire chapters of human history, civilizations that rose, shone, and fell, leaving us to believe we are the first, when in truth we may only be the latest. And so the question is no longer just about the past, it's about us. If others came before, if they too built and dreamed and reached for the stars, then why are they gone? Did they fall to war, to greed, to the forces of nature? Or did they reach too far, unraveling their own world with the very tools that made them powerful? When we look at our own nuclear arsenals, at our climate struggles, at our fragile global systems, do we not see echoes of the same dangers? Perhaps the greatest sign that we are not the first civilization is not buried in ruins or carved in stone. Perhaps it is the feeling of déjà vu, the uneasy sense that we are treading a path walked before, and that path may end not with triumph, but with silence.
Imagine standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its sheer size dominates the desert, its geometry precise to a fraction of an inch. Mainstream archaeology tells us it was built around 4,500 years ago, with ropes, copper chisels, and brute manpower. Yet the more we study it, the more impossible it seems. The base is aligned almost perfectly to true north, with an accuracy that even modern surveyors would struggle to replicate without advanced tools. The blocks weigh up to 80 tons, quarried and transported across miles of desert. The internal chambers align with star constellations, suggesting an understanding of astronomy that shouldn't have existed at the time. Was this the pinnacle of ancient Egyptian genius, or the hand-me-down knowledge of a civilization even older, one that left behind its secrets encoded in stone? And Egypt is not alone. Half a world away, the megaliths of Sacsayhuaman in Peru fit together so tightly that even a razor blade cannot slip between the stones. Each block is uniquely shaped, carved, and angled to interlock perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The stones themselves are enormous, some weighing over 100 tons. To move them across rugged terrain without wheels, without iron tools, defies explanation. We are left with two possibilities. Either ancient builders knew techniques that we have lost, or they inherited methods from someone else, a forgotten civilization whose fingerprints linger only in stone. What if these monuments are not random acts of construction, but deliberate messages left for us? Stone, after all, is eternal compared to wood, metal, or clay. If an advanced civilization had once existed, knowing that time would erase almost all traces of their existence, wouldn't they choose to speak to us in the language of permanence? Wouldn't they leave behind monuments so vast, so indestructible, that they would survive ice ages, floods, and earthquakes,
waiting for future humanity to find them and wonder? Now consider the mystery of ancient maps. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, depicts the coastline of South America with stunning accuracy, long before it was fully explored. Even stranger, it shows Antarctica, not as an ice-covered wasteland, but with a coastline free of ice, as it might have looked thousands of years ago. How could such a map exist? Official history says Antarctica was discovered in the 19th century. Was Piri Reis copying from older sources, perhaps maps preserved from a time when a seafaring civilization had charted the world long before us? If so, who were they and what else did they know? The deeper we look, the more we see anomalies. In South Africa, scientists have discovered vast fields of mysterious stone circles, some estimated to be over 200,000 years old. If accurate, that places them long before the rise of known civilization. Their purpose remains unknown, though some speculate they were astronomical calendars or energy centers. Could they be remnants of a civilization so ancient it predates even our imagination? Even our own DNA hints at mysteries. Humanity's sudden leap from simple hunter-gatherer societies to complex civilizations has always puzzled scientists. For almost 200,000 years, anatomically modern humans lived much the same way, and then suddenly, around 10,000 years ago, civilization exploded. Agriculture, cities, writing, astronomy. Why then? Why not earlier? Was it a spark of chance? Or was there an outside influence, knowledge carried forward from a previous age, or perhaps gifted by those who came before? And this leads to a terrifying question. If there were civilizations before us, then why did they fall? Did they succumb to natural disasters like asteroid impacts or supervolcanoes? Or did they destroy themselves, consumed by their own technology, as we fear we might with ours? Imagine if an earlier civilization had reached our level of advancement. If they had mastered energy, metals, chemistry, would their traces not eventually vanish, ground into dust by time? After all, if our world vanished tomorrow, in a few thousand years, nature would reclaim it. In 1,000,000 years, there would be almost nothing left. A lone skyscraper reduced to rubble, a faint chemical trace in the soil, a shard of plastic buried in rock. Hardly enough to tell the story of an entire world. If civilizations have risen and fallen before, then history is not a line. It is a cycle. A cycle of creation and destruction, of brilliance and collapse. Each time, intelligence rises, reaches for the stars, and falls into silence, leaving the next to wonder if they were truly the first. And so we must ask ourselves, are we next? If others walked this path before us, then their greatest lesson may be one they could not pass on. That advanced civilizations, no matter how powerful, are fragile. That time, nature, or self-destruction will eventually sweep them away. Perhaps the real question is not whether we are the first civilization, but whether we will be the last.
Picture a city of glass and steel, New York, Tokyo, Dubai. Imagine it 1,000 years after humanity disappears. Vines creep across skyscrapers, rivers cut through streets, wild animals roam free. In 10,000 years, the tallest towers crumble in the dust. In 100,000, the continents shift, seas rise and fall, glaciers grind the land to new shapes. By then, almost nothing recognizable remains. Now stretch your mind further, 1,000,000 years. Would anyone even know we existed? This is the haunting reality. If there were civilizations before us, their ruins might already be lost, consumed by the endless churn of Earth's geology. We might be walking over their graves every single day, unaware that beneath our feet lies the dust of forgotten empires. This idea is not just fantasy. Scientists call it the Silurian hypothesis, a thought experiment that asks, if an industrial civilization had risen millions of years ago, would we be able to detect it today? The answer is chilling. Over such timescales, almost all physical artifacts would vanish. What would remain instead are subtle fingerprints, unusual chemical residues in rock layers, sudden spikes of carbon in the atmosphere, traces of plastics fossilized into stone. In other words, the very signs we ourselves are leaving behind, a geological scar, a warning written in Earth's memory. Could it be that when geologists dig through ancient strata, puzzling over anomalies, they are glimpsing echoes of civilizations erased long before us? One such anomaly exists, the Carboniferous period, over 300 million years ago, when coal beds formed. Within those layers, strange metallic spheres and even imprints resembling tools have been reported, though their authenticity is debated fiercely. Are they natural oddities, or something far more extraordinary? Skeptics dismiss them, yet the possibility lingers. What if we've already found traces of the unthinkable, but rejected them because they don't fit the story we tell ourselves about the past? And then there are the fossil fuels themselves: oil, coal, natural gas, the compressed remains of ancient life. We use them to power our world, yet some scientists have speculated, if another civilization had existed long before us, could they too have burned through such reserves? If so, perhaps what we find today is not just the product of nature, but the remnants of their industry, buried beneath layers of time. It is an unsettling thought that our entire modern civilization might be fueled in part by the ashes of one that came before. But if civilizations existed before us, where are their monuments, their art, their stories? Perhaps the answer lies in scale. Human civilization has existed for mere thousands of years, and already we've reshaped the planet in dramatic ways. If another civilization rose millions of years ago, their works may have been erased not once, but many times over by shifting continents, rising seas, and extinction events. Think of the dinosaurs. For 165 million years, they dominated Earth, yet we only know them from scattered bones and fossils. If creatures that vast and powerful could vanish almost without a trace, how much harder would it be to find evidence of an intelligent species that may have lasted only a fraction of that time? The silence of the past tempts us to believe we are unique, but silence is not absence. Silence may simply mean we have not learned to listen. Could the clues be hidden in myths we dismiss, in rocks we overlook, in anomalies we discard as mistakes? Each question deepens the mystery, and with it comes an unsettling sense of humility. We may not be the pinnacle of creation, but merely one verse in an epic song the Earth has been singing for eons. And what if intelligence is not unique to humans at all? Some researchers have wondered, could other species, long extinct, have reached forms of intelligence we do not recognize? We assume civilization must look like ours: cities, tools, machines. But what if an entirely different form of intelligence once thrived? One that did not leave monuments of stone, but instead lived in harmony with nature, erasing its own tracks. Or one that did rise in technology only to be obliterated by the planet itself, leaving behind nothing but the faintest geological whisper. If so, then the greatest irony is this: the only proof that might endure would not be their achievements, but their mistakes. Pollution, chemical scars, radioactive isotopes. The fingerprints of destruction may last far longer than the fingerprints of creation. And isn't that the same fate awaiting us? Long after our cities crumble, long after our languages are forgotten, the plastic we leave behind, the nuclear isotopes we scatter, the carbon we pour into the air, these may be the only signatures of our existence. The monuments of our age may not be pyramids or temples, but the invisible scars we carve into the earth itself. So here is the question that lingers like a shadow. When future beings, millions of years from now, study the rocks of our time, will they see us as the first or just the latest?
Across the ages, whispers of forgotten worlds echo in our myths and stories. The Bible speaks of giants walking the earth. The Sumerian tablets tell of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens to shape mankind. The Popol Vuh of the Maya describes earlier creations, worlds that rose and fell before ours. These tales span continents, separated by oceans, yet they share the same haunting theme. Humanity was not the first. Could it be that myth is not mere imagination, but memory? The distorted retelling of events so ancient that history itself has erased their proof? Take the flood. Nearly every culture has one. In Mesopotamia, it is the tale of Utnapishtim, who built a great boat to survive waters sent by the gods. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah's Ark bears the same role. In India, the god Vishnu warns Manu of an oncoming flood that would drown the world. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs told of suns, cycles of worlds, each destroyed by fire, wind, or water. Why would civilizations separated by continents in time preserve the same story? Is it coincidence? Or is it evidence of a real global cataclysm that wiped out a civilization before ours? And if so, who survived to tell the tale? Some believe the key lies in Antarctica. Beneath miles of ice, radar has revealed strange formations, mountain ranges, rivers, and valleys hidden for millions of years. There are even claims, though disputed, of geometric structures buried under the ice, suggesting the possibility of ancient human activity. If true, it could rewrite history entirely. Was Antarctica once habitable, home to an advanced society later swallowed by ice? Could Plato's Atlantis lie not in the Atlantic Ocean, but beneath the frozen wastes of the southern pole? Yet it is not only ice and myth that raise questions. Consider the Nazca Lions in Peru, immense geoglyphs carved into the desert floor, stretching for miles. Animals, spirals, and perfectly straight lines that can only be fully seen from the sky. Who were they made for? Some argue they were ritual pathways, others claim they were messages to the gods. But one thing is clear, they were never meant to be seen by those on the ground. Were they instead remnants of knowledge inherited from an age where flight was not only imagined but real? A memory of machines lost to time. Now shift your gaze to the stars. Ancient cultures across the globe seemed obsessed with the heavens, building monuments aligned to celestial events. The pyramids of Giza mirror the belt of Orion. Stonehenge aligns with the solstices. The temples of Teotihuacan reflect the movement of Venus. Even at Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known temple, carvings depict constellations and cosmic events. Why this universal fixation on the sky? Could it be that the stars were a cosmic clock, a warning system passed down from civilizations that had already witnessed cataclysm? Perhaps they mark the heavens not for ritual, but as survival, encoding the timeline of destruction into monuments that would outlive them. And destruction did come. Science confirms it. Around 12,800 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, something extraordinary happened. A sudden cooling, known as the Younger Dryas, plunged the world back into near glacial conditions. Massive floods swept across continents as ice sheets melted. Some scientists suggest it was triggered by a comet impact, scattering fragments across the northern hemisphere. If true, it could explain the flood myths that echo across humanity. But what if it was more than just a natural disaster? What if a civilization was thriving at that time, only to be obliterated in days? If we are truly the first, the Younger Dryas was simply nature's fury. But if we are not, it may have been the day the last great civilization was erased. Look closely and you see the scars. In North America, vast fields of strange geological patterns hint at catastrophic flooding. In Greenland, black layers of nanodiamonds, evidence of an impact. Across the world, the timing matches the collapse of megafauna, extinctions that reshaped ecosystems. But what if it also marked the collapse of something more, something we have yet to recognize? Could Göbekli Tepe, mysteriously buried around the same time, have been a monument to memory, built by survivors trying to preserve fragments of a lost age? And the silence that follows is chilling. For thousands of years after, humanity seemed to restart from scratch, slowly rebuilding. Agriculture spread, cities rose, and history as we know it began. But is this truly the beginning, or just the second act of a much older play? If it is, then our entire understanding of civilization is upside down. We are not the pinnacle of progress, but the inheritors of fragments, stories, myths, and monuments left like breadcrumbs across time. And the question that burns like fire is this: what else is out there waiting to be found, hidden beneath oceans, deserts, or ice, whispering the truth we refuse to hear?
There is a strange unease in the air when we speak of lost civilizations. It's not only the mystery of what they might have achieved, but the fear of what they might have endured. If humanity is not the first, then others before us rose to greatness, and then fell. Their knowledge extinguished, their monuments buried, their voices silenced. And if it happened to them, could it happen to us? Consider the evidence of sudden endings. The Indus Valley civilization, once thriving with cities more advanced than Mesopotamia, with running water, sewage systems, and carefully planned streets, collapsed seemingly overnight. No grand war, no conquering empire, it simply faded. Some blame climate change, shifts in rivers, or drought. But what if this pattern, the sudden disappearance of brilliance, is the echo of a cycle much larger than we admit? What if civilizations, no matter how advanced, always walk the edge of destruction? Even our own myths hint at warnings. The Greek poet Hesiod spoke of 5 ages of man: golden, silver, bronze, heroic, and iron. Each age was a cycle, a civilization rising and falling, punished for its arrogance, its violence, its neglect of the gods. Today we call it mythology, but what if it is history told in metaphor? What if ages are not allegory, but literal cycles of humanity itself? Perhaps we are not the first Iron Age, but simply the latest. And then there is the enigma of technology. Legends across cultures speak of weapons and powers far beyond what should have existed. In the Mahabharata, India's ancient epic, there are descriptions of flying chariots, vimanas, and weapons that burn the sky with light, turning sand into glass. At Mohenjo-daro, one of the great cities of the Indus Valley, archaeologists found skeletons with radiation levels higher than normal background, and streets vitrified as though exposed to intense heat. Could this be coincidence? Natural disaster? Or are we glimpsing shadows of a forgotten war, one fought with weapons that should not have existed thousands of years ago? Skeptics will say it is impossible, that we would have found undeniable proof if such civilizations had existed. But time is the greatest eraser. If humanity were to vanish today, in 50,000 years, what would remain of our skyscrapers, our satellites, our libraries? The Hoover Dam, perhaps, or Mount Rushmore? Maybe fragments of roads and tunnels, but most would be dust. And if millions of years passed, almost nothing. Just a thin chemical signature in the rocks, the same kind of anomalies we already puzzle over in ancient strata. The same questions we refuse to ask too loudly. Some researchers propose that we should not be looking for ruins, but for patterns, geological anomalies, sudden spikes of carbon or isotopes that cannot be explained by natural processes. In short, we should be looking for ourselves written into the past. Because if others once walked this earth, their greatest legacy may not be their monuments, but their mistakes. And perhaps, just perhaps, we are already seeing them. Take the desert glass of Egypt and Libya, vast sheets of fused sand formed under temperatures hotter than a nuclear blast. Mainstream science explains them as the result of meteor strikes. But to others, they look eerily like the aftermath of a weapon,
unleashed long before humans should have had the means to wield such power. In truth, no one knows for certain, but the resemblance is unsettling. And then there is the question of memory. Why do so many myths warn us against arrogance, against pride, against reaching too far? The Tower of Babel, destroyed when humanity tried to reach the heavens. Prometheus, punished for stealing fire from the gods. Could these be distorted memories of real events, encoded in myth to ensure the warning was never lost? A message that says, civilizations rise, they climb higher and higher, and then they fall. It is here that the shadows close in on us, because when we look at our own world, at climate change, at nuclear arsenals, at fragile systems strained to breaking, we can't help but wonder, are we repeating the same mistakes? Are we walking the same road, step for step, as those who came before us? And if so, what awaits us at the end of that road? The possibility that we are not the first is more than a curiosity. It's a mirror, showing us a reflection of what may become of us. And perhaps the truest sign that others came before is the silence itself. Silence where there should be voices. Silence where there should be memory. Silence that warns us nothing lasts forever, not even civilization. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert lies a mystery. Once, this vast sea of sand was lush with rivers, lakes, and forests. Satellite imagery has revealed the traces of ancient waterways, cities swallowed by dunes, and the enigmatic Richat structure, the so-called Eye of the Sahara. Perfectly circular, 25 miles across, visible only from space. Some scientists claim it is a natural formation. Others whisper that it could be the remains of something much greater. A city so massive, so ancient, that it has been erased by shifting sands and time. Could this be the footprint of Atlantis, or perhaps another civilization altogether, forgotten by history, but not entirely by the Earth itself? The Sahara is not alone in holding secrets. In the Amazon rainforest, archaeologists have begun to uncover vast networks of geometric earthworks, circles, lines, and squares carved into the jungle floor. Hidden for centuries beneath dense vegetation, these structures suggest a level of organization and settlement far beyond what we once believed. And yet, even now, we have only scratched the surface. How many more ruins, cities, and monuments lie concealed beneath forests, deserts, and oceans? How much of our true past is hidden simply because we have not yet looked? Then there's the haunting enigma of Baalbek in Lebanon. There, in the foundations of an ancient temple, rest some of the largest stone blocks ever quarried by human hands. The so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman weighs over 1,000 tons. To this day, no one can fully explain how it was moved, if it ever was. Modern cranes would struggle with such a task, yet somehow, in an age with no machinery, these stones were shaped, lifted, and placed. Were the builders inheritors of forgotten techniques? Did they stumble upon the remnants of knowledge left behind by those who came before? Or is Baalbek itself a palimpsest, an older site repurposed by later civilizations, its origins stretching back into the mists of prehistory? Across the ocean, the mysteries multiply. On Easter Island, the colossal Moai statues stare endlessly at the horizon. We know they were carved by the Rapa Nui, but why? Legends speak of a forgotten people, of knowledge brought from a land beyond the sea. The statues themselves, buried to their shoulders in soil, conceal intricate carvings on their bodies, carvings that few ever see. Were they monuments to ancestors? Or were they meant to preserve knowledge, encoded in stone, waiting for a future humanity to rediscover? And always there are the stories of the stars. In Dogon mythology, an African tribe speaks of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Their traditions describe it as a binary system, Sirius A and Sirius B, with uncanny accuracy. But Sirius B is invisible to the naked eye, discovered only with modern telescopes. How could the Dogon have known? Was it coincidence? imagination, or inherited knowledge from an age we no longer remember? The answer remains a riddle, one that teases us with the possibility that ancient peoples preserved secrets not born of their own time, but of a civilization long gone. It is here that the boundaries blur between science and myth, between what we know and what we fear. For every discovery that fits neatly into the puzzle of history, there are anomalies that refuse to align. Objects out of place, structures out of time, myths too consistent to dismiss. Taken alone, they are curiosities. Taken together, they form a shadow, the outline of something vast, something we cannot yet see clearly. A story half erased, waiting to be told. And if that story is true, if we are not the first civilization, then perhaps we are walking not towards progress, but towards repetition. Each age rising like a flame, burning brightly, then collapsing into ash, leaving only whispers behind. The pyramids, the temples, the monuments, perhaps they are not just relics of our ancestors, but echoes of those who walked this path long before us. The question is not only whether they existed, the question is whether we will share their fate.
There are moments in history when the veil seems to lift, when the past reveals a fragment of something that does not belong. One such moment came with the discovery of the Baghdad Battery. Clay jars, copper cylinders, and iron rods dated to over 2,000 years ago. To some, it was a curiosity, an object with no clear purpose. But when reconstructed, the jars produced electricity. Crude, yes, but undeniable. What were ancient people doing with electric power? Lighting temples? Electroplating metals? Or was this the remnant of a technology handed down, half-remembered, from an older, greater age? Similar questions arise from the so-called Dendera light, a carving in the Temple of Hathor in Egypt depicting what appears to be a giant bulb connected to a power source. Scholars dismiss it as symbolic, representing creation or fertility. Yet the image is eerily precise, resembling modern electrical equipment in form. Coincidence? Or another faint echo of lost knowledge disguised as art? The deeper we search, the more unsettling it becomes. In India, mysterious iron pillars stand rust-free for thousands of years, defying the corrosion that consumes modern steel. In Colombia, tiny golden figurines shaped like airplanes sit in museum cases, their wings, tails, and aerodynamic designs unlike any bird or insect. Some dismiss them as toys or artistic abstractions. Others insist they are models, blueprints in miniature of flying machines long forgotten. Could it be that flight itself is not our invention, but a rediscovery? And then there's the haunting possibility of nuclear war in the distant past. In the deserts of Rajasthan, there are regions where the sand is fused into glass, as if exposed to incredible heat. Local legends speak of a time when a single projectile, charged with all the power of the universe, turned cities into ash. The Mahabharata describes warriors wielding weapons that shone like the sun, leaving survivors blind and sick with hair falling from their bodies. To some, these are only myths. To others, they are the fragmented memory of something terrifyingly real. If true, it would mean that humanity, or perhaps those who came before us, once wielded powers that rivaled our own, only to destroy themselves with them. If we dare to imagine that possibility, then the silence of history takes on a new meaning. Perhaps civilizations before us did rise to greatness, did reach the heights of science and power, and then erased themselves in fire. Their ruins ground to dust, their cities buried, their voices surviving only as warnings in stories we now call myth. If so, then our world today is not the first to stand at the edge of self-destruction. It is simply the latest. What is most unsettling is how fragile evidence really is. Modern archaeology thrives on bones, pottery, and stone,
But advanced civilizations may not have left such things. Our world today is built on concrete, plastic, steel, and silicon, materials that decay far faster than we imagine. In 100,000 years, most of it would be gone. Only stone monuments and geological scars would remain. Perhaps this is why the ancient world speaks to us through pyramids, standing stones, and temples. Perhaps these were chosen not only as sacred spaces, but as messages carved into the bones of the earth meant to outlast ages of silence. And yet we still walk blind, trapped by our arrogance. We assume history begins with us, that we are the pinnacle of creation, but the anomalies whisper otherwise. Out-of-place artifacts, inexplicable ruins, myths that echo across continents, they are the cracks in the mirror. They reveal that the story of humanity may be far older, far stranger than we dare to admit. The earth may not only hold fossils of beasts and bones, it may hold the ghosts of civilizations erased and forgotten, waiting for us to recognize them. If that is true, then the real question is not, were we the first, but what will we leave behind for those who come after? Will we be remembered as the beginning of something greater? Or will we too vanish, our memory reduced to myth, our legacy reduced to silence? The signs suggest we are not alone in history, but what we do now may decide whether we remain a fleeting echo or the first to finally break the cycle.
In the cold emptiness of space, the Earth is just one planet among billions, and yet here we are, convinced that we alone stand at the pinnacle of creation. But what if the cosmos looks at us with pity, knowing that civilizations rise and fall like sparks from a fire, brief, brilliant, and gone? If we are not the first, then perhaps our story is not unique. It may be one chapter in a book written countless times before, each erased by time's relentless hand. Think of the silence that surrounds us. For decades, scientists have scanned the skies, listening for signals from intelligent life beyond Earth. But so far, we hear nothing. This silence is known as the Fermi paradox. If the universe is teeming with planets, why have we found no one? Some say it is because civilizations always destroy themselves before they can reach the stars. If that is true out there, then why not here? Perhaps Earth itself has witnessed this cycle. Perhaps others walked this path, reached for the heavens, and vanished before they could make their mark. Even the traces of what we call progress feel precarious. Our satellites orbit the Earth in fragile chains, vulnerable to time, radiation, and collision. In just a few centuries without maintenance, they would all fall back into the atmosphere and burn. Our great cities, symbols of human achievement, would crumble in mere thousands of years. Our digital world, billions of books, images, and voices stored on fragile drives, would be erased in decades. Without us, our memory would vanish faster than the blink of an eye in cosmic time. Is it so hard to imagine that same erasure happening to those who came before us? And yet, the Earth itself keeps secrets. Deep in its crust, scientists find anomalies, spikes of carbon dioxide, mysterious isotopes, sudden warming and cooling periods. Some fit natural cycles, others are harder to explain. Could they be the scars of past civilizations, burned into stone and soil? The Silurian hypothesis asks exactly this. If an industrial age existed long before us, would we even know? The unsettling answer, perhaps not. Perhaps we are already walking atop their ashes, mistaking their ruins for natural rock, their monuments for mountains, their warnings for myth. The more we look, the more myths themselves seem like memory. Plato's Atlantis swallowed by the sea, the Aztec suns, cycles of worlds destroyed one after another, the Sumerian kings whose reigns stretched for thousands of years before the flood, the Hopi who speak of worlds that ended in fire and water. These stories, scattered across every corner of the globe, may not be fantasy at all. They may be fractured records written in the only language that survives disaster: story. Stories that warn us, stories that beg us to listen before we too vanish into silence. And yet we walk the razor's edge. Our oceans rise, our forests burn, our weapons grow in power. We are told we are unique, that history is a line, that progress is inevitable. But what if history is not aligned at all, but a circle of civilizations rising, shining, and falling, each convinced it was the first, each blind to the ruins beneath its feet? Imagine the weight of that realization, that we are not pioneers, but inheritors, that we are not the first flame, but one of many, that the earth has carried others before us, each erased, each forgotten. And if that is true, then the question is not whether we are the first civilization. The question is whether we will be the last, or whether we too will fall, leaving behind only whispers, myths, and stone. The silence of the earth is heavy. Perhaps it is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of memory. And perhaps, if we listen closely enough, we will hear the echoes of those who came before us, warning us that time is not on our side.
Imagine for a moment that the Earth itself is a palimpsest, an ancient manuscript written over and over again. Each civilization a story inked across its surface, only to be erased and replaced. The faint traces of the earlier words remain, ghostly and half-seen, if only we dared to look. That is what archaeology sometimes feels like, not the unveiling of a single continuous tale, but the piecing together of fragments from many forgotten ones. Look at the megaliths that stand across the globe. From the rolling fields of Britain to the remote corners of South America, we find colossal stones raised in patterns that defy both time and reason. Stonehenge, Karnak, Nabta Playa, all aligned with the stars, all placed with precision. Did scattered tribes simply stumble upon the same cosmic obsession? Or are these monuments the fingerprints of a knowledge much older, carried through whispers and myths from a civilization that lived and died before the ones we know? Consider Pumapumku in Bolivia. Enormous stone blocks, some cut with laser-like precision, litter the landscape. They are shaped into interlocking forms, almost like giant Lego bricks, as though designed for assembly in ways we cannot replicate with simple tools. These stones are granite and diorite, harder than steel, yet they bear cuts so smooth that even today's machines would struggle to match them. How could this be? Were the builders experimenting with techniques lost to time? Or were they inheritors of methods passed down from an era even earlier when technology had already flourished and vanished? The deeper we dig, the stranger it becomes. Off the coast of India, sonar scans revealed an ancient city beneath the waves, perfectly geometric, with streets, walls, and foundations stretching for miles. Some claim it predates the oldest known cities by thousands of years. If true, it rewrites the very timeline of civilization. Yet we hesitate because to accept it would mean rewriting everything we believe about human progress. And still, the ruins are there, silent, undeniable, waiting for us to acknowledge them. The same is true of the Yonaguni Monument off Japan's coast, a massive structure submerged beneath the sea. Its steps, terraces, and platforms appear carved, but skeptics call it a natural formation. The truth may lie somewhere in between. But whether nature or man-made, one fact remains. The sea has swallowed countless coasts since the end of the last ice age. If early civilizations built their cities along those ancient shores, then most of their remains now lie hidden under hundreds of feet of water, out of reach of casual discovery. And perhaps that is the greatest obstacle: time itself. For hundreds of thousands of years, modern humans existed, yet our recorded history is only a tiny fraction of that span. If another civilization had risen 100,000 years ago, would we find them now? Or would every trace be gone,
ground into the earth, reduced to myths of gods and giants told around fires. Our arrogance blinds us into thinking we would see the proof clearly, when in truth we may have already seen it and dismissed it as coincidence, anomaly, or impossibility. If civilizations have risen before, then their story is not one of permanence, but of fragility. They built, they dreamed, they conquered, and they vanished. What killed them? Was it the wrath of nature? Floods, comets, volcanic fire? Or was it their own ambition, their own hubris, that turned brilliance to ashes? These are not just questions about the past. They are warnings etched into the silence of history, warnings meant for us. Because as we stand today, surrounded by our skyscrapers, our satellites, and our endless faith and progress, we too are writing in ink upon the fragile parchment of time. And like those who may have come before, we are not immune to erasure. The signs around us are not only about them, they are about us. And the message is chillingly clear. Civilizations do not last forever.
Think of the patterns that haunt our history. Civilizations rise, dazzling in their ingenuity, only to collapse into ruins and dust. The Maya, masters of astronomy and architecture, left behind sprawling cities swallowed by jungle. The Roman Empire, once unshakable, crumbled into fragments remembered only in stone and story. And yet these are the civilizations we do remember. How many others vanished so completely that their names, their languages, their very existence were obliterated by time? If such a fate can befall the empires of our written history, how much easier it would be for those far older, whose memory never reached parchment or clay. We think of history as a single thread, leading from the caves to the stars, but what if it is more like a tapestry, with countless threads woven, cut, and woven again, each age rising, then severed, leaving only faint fibers beneath the surface of the next? When we walk upon the ruins of ancient cities, when we marvel at the unexplained, perhaps we are only seeing the frayed edges of civilizations erased from the fabric of memory. Take the mystery of the Sphinx. Egyptologists say it was built around 4,500 years ago, yet geological studies of its body reveal deep erosion from water, not wind, erosion that would require thousands of years of rainfall long before the desert was dry. Could the Sphinx be older than Egypt itself? A monument inherited by the pharaohs rather than built by them? If so, who carved it, and what message did they leave staring across the sands of eternity? Or consider the legends of the Hopi people, who speak of worlds destroyed and remade. They tell of previous worlds ending in fire and flood, of survivors guided by spirits to begin anew. To many, these are creation myths, but to others they are testimony, fragments of memory carried across ages, warning us that humanity has lived through multiple cycles before. Are we simply the fifth world, destined like the others to fall? Science itself hints at forgotten chapters. Around 50,000 years ago, there was a sudden leap in human creativity, art, tools, symbolic thought, appearing almost overnight in evolutionary terms. Why then? Why not earlier? Some scientists call it the Great Leap Forward, the dawn of human culture. But was it truly the first dawn? Or was it a rebirth, a rediscovery after some earlier flame had been extinguished? And this brings us to the most unsettling question of all. If others came before, why did they fall? The Earth is old and intelligence fragile. A single asteroid can erase eons of progress. A single shift in climate can collapse entire ecosystems. Or worse, a single misstep in technology can unravel everything. If past civilizations rose to mastery, perhaps they too unlocked powers they could not control. Perhaps their story ended not with nature's fury, but with their own. When we look at our world today, at the smoke in our skies, at the warming seas, at the weapons we hide in silos beneath the ground, do we not see the same dangers? Are we not repeating the same pattern, walking the same tightrope, blind to the abyss below? If we are not the first, then their greatest lesson is clear: progress is fragile, and hubris is fatal. What if the ruins we marvel at, the myths we recite, are not simply remnants of the past, but warnings meant for us? What if the stone circles, the pyramids, the cosmic alignments were built not just as temples, but as messages across time, telling us that others once stood where we now stand, and that their silence is our possible future? The earth holds its secrets well, but the silence is not empty. It is heavy with memory. And if we listen closely, perhaps we will hear the voices of those who came before, whispering through the stones, begging us not to make the same mistakes. The deeper we stare into the abyss of time, the more fragile our own story begins to feel. We look at our skyscrapers, our machines, our glowing cities at night, and we convince ourselves that this is permanent, that this is progress carved into stone. But in truth, we are as vulnerable as any who came before. If tomorrow an asteroid struck, or the climate shifted just a little more violently, or if we unleashed our own weapons in arrogance or fear, how long would our world endure? 10,000 years? A million? Or would we vanish in a handful of days, leaving behind only broken traces to confuse whatever comes after? Think of Chernobyl, a thriving city one day, a ghost the next. Nature has already reclaimed it. Vines weaving through buildings, wolves roaming the streets. Imagine that multiplied across the globe. In a century, our highways would be forests. In 1,000 years, our tallest towers would collapse into rubble. In 10,000, there would be nothing left to show we were ever here, except perhaps a few fragments buried deep underground. If this is the fate that awaits us, then is it not reasonable to believe it already happened before, not once, but many times? Geology itself whispers this possibility. Layers of Earth tell stories of sudden catastrophe, extinction events, climate upheavals, massive volcanic winters. Some we explain with asteroids, others with shifting continents, but in each case there is always the same silence afterward, an empty span of time where life had to begin again. Could one of those silent stretches have hidden a civilization erased too completely for us to see? Could we be sifting through their graves, calling their ruins natural, their stories myth, their scars geology? Our arrogance blinds us. We believe we are the pinnacle, the first to dream, the first to build, the first to reach for the stars. But what if we are only repeating an ancient cycle? Perhaps intelligence itself is not rare, but fragile, doomed to flicker and die over and over on this planet and countless others. Perhaps the silence of the universe, the great unanswered question of the Fermi paradox, is not because intelligence never arises, but because it never survives. And if that is true, then our monuments are not achievements, they are wagers. Stone pyramids, desert glyphs, megalithic temples, each is a gamble against time, a desperate attempt to speak to the future. What were they trying to say? Were they honoring gods? Or were they warning us? We were here. We rose. We fell. Learn from us, or you will join us in silence. When we listen to the old myths, the floods, the fires, the lost golden ages, maybe we should stop treating them as fairy tales. Maybe they are the last messages of those who lived before us, encoded in stories so they could survive the death of memory. Myths are harder to destroy than monuments. They travel in song, in story, in whispers across generations. They carry the weight of memory long after the facts are gone. Perhaps the most haunting possibility is that the stories themselves are true, and we have ignored them all along. So here we are, standing at the edge of a precipice, wondering whether the signs scattered across the earth are the ruins of others or simply anomalies we cannot yet explain. But whether they prove real or not, the message they carry is the same. Nothing lasts forever. Not stone, not steel, not even civilization. The real question is not whether we are the first. The real question is whether we will be the ones to break the cycle, or whether we too will vanish into silence, leaving behind nothing but whispers for those who dare to come after.
If there is one truth history has taught us, it is that the Earth forgets. Forests swallow cities, deserts bury monuments, oceans claim coastlines. And yet, for all its power to erase, the Earth also remembers. Not in stories or in words, but in scars. Ancient floodplains carved by torrents of water, layers of ash from forgotten eruptions, isotopes embedded in stone like fingerprints of catastrophe. These are the pages of Earth's hidden history, a record not of kings and empires, but of cycles: rise, fall, silence. The silence is the most terrifying part. We dig into the ground and find bones, tools, and pottery stretching back tens of thousands of years, but what of the hundreds of thousands before? For most of humanity's existence, we see only fragments, and even those are rare. Could entire civilizations have risen and vanished in those blank stretches of time? Civilizations that may have burned bright, but left behind no pottery shards, no bones, no ruins we can easily recognize? Imagine if our own world were erased tomorrow. 100,000 years from now, what would remain? Perhaps a handful of massive monuments, Mount Rushmore carved into stone, the pyramids of Giza, maybe Hoover Dam. Our satellites would have long since fallen, our cities would be jungles, our machines dust. What would future archaeologists make of us if they stumbled upon only a broken statue or a strange layer of chemicals in the soil? Would they even believe we had existed? Or would we become, like those before us, only a myth? Perhaps this is why ancient cultures obsessed over permanence. The Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Tiwanaku, Baalbek, all built in stone, the one material that could endure the ages. Maybe these were not only temples or tombs, but also messages, warnings to the future. We were here, we built, we fell. And yet, like children, we brush them aside as mysteries or curiosities, refusing to hear what they may be trying to tell us. Look at the stars. For thousands of years, people aligned their monuments to the heavens: Orion, Sirius, the Pleiades. Why? Was it only religion? Or was it a cosmic marker, a way of encoding time itself into stone? Maybe they knew that ages would pass and civilizations would fall, but the stars would remain constant. Maybe they aligned their works so that when we looked, we might understand and remember. And yet, do we remember? Or are we too blind, too arrogant to see the signs for what they are? We dismiss myths as stories, ruins as anomalies, evidence as coincidence. But what if buried in that arrogance is our greatest mistake? What if the cycle has played out countless times before, and every time those who walked before us left behind warnings that we failed to heed? Because the cycle is not just about them, it is about us. We too face floods, fire, and the shadow of our own weapons. We too stand at the edge of collapse, believing we are eternal when history whispers otherwise. The signs that we may not be the first civilization are not just curiosities of the past, they are mirrors of our present. The question that remains hanging heavy in the silence is this: will we learn from the echoes of those who came before? Or will we too vanish into myth, our legacy reduced to whispers told by those who rise after us?
Imagine standing in the ruins of our world 100,000 years from now. The continents are different, reshaped by tectonic shifts. Seas have swallowed coastlines, mountains have risen where there were once plains, and somewhere, a wanderer stumbles upon a fragment of concrete fused into stone, or a shard of glass weathered into crystal? Would they recognize it as the remnant of a civilization, or would they dismiss it as a curiosity of geology, just as we often do with the anomalies we find today? This is the most haunting possibility, that we have already found signs of civilizations before us and ignored them. Out-of-place artifacts, dismissed as frauds or mistakes. Megaliths, explained away as primitive ingenuity. Myths, treated as imagination rather than memory. What if we are surrounded by the fingerprints of the forgotten, too blind to see them for what they are? The Earth is merciless in its erasure. Every 100,000 years, ice ages come and go, carving the land anew. Every few million years, asteroids strike, triggering mass extinctions. Every so often, supervolcanoes erupt, covering continents in ash. Against such forces, what chance does a fragile civilization have? Unless they leave messages carved into stone, they vanish almost completely. And perhaps this is why stone monuments are scattered across the globe, built by cultures we claim were primitive. Perhaps they were not primitive at all. Perhaps they were carrying forward the last fragments of knowledge from an age that had already fallen. Even our myths may be encoded warnings. The flood that sweeps the earth, the fire from the sky, the arrogance of builders punished by collapse. Why are these themes universal? Why do cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, tell the same story? Could it be that each is remembering the same event, or worse, the same cycle? A cycle of civilizations rising, reaching too far, and falling back into silence. And here we stand, proud and blind, convinced we are the first, even as we repeat the same patterns. We harness the atom, split the sky with machines, and change the very climate of the planet. We build weapons that can burn the world in hours. We are powerful beyond measure and fragile beyond belief. If others walked this path before, then their fate is not just history, it is prophecy. What if the greatest monuments of the past are not tombs, not temples, not triumphs, but warnings? Warnings written in the only language that endures across ages: stone, myth, and silence. And what if the true test of whether we are the first or not is not found in ruins at all, but in the choices we make right now? Because if we fall, we will join them in silence. If we endure, we may be the first to break the cycle. The question lingers like a shadow over us. Are we simply another forgotten chapter, destined to fade into dust and myth? Or will we be the first to step beyond the cycle, to survive, to thrive, to carve our story, not just into stone, but into the stars?